And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Record of Sword Forged World, an unofficial Sword World podcast. My name is Mildra. I am your one and only gaming monk. With me, I have three of my good brothers. I think it looks like Maki is busy with content morning, so she'll either be winning the Doku challenge or, oh, sorry, not content morning, but repo. She'll either be winning the Doku challenge or
we will remember her in absentia.
Yes. The sheep, with all the snow outside, maybe the sheep camouflaged.
You know, that's fine. That's fine.
But with that said, the last couple episodes that we've done, and I do apologize for the 1 week delay because I was in no condition to perform yesterday. Not yesterday, but last week. Which is also why...
You're still in no condition to perform, apparently.
Fuck off. But I'm not hacking up a lung like I was a week ago. But for the first two episodes, they were more about setting the broad scene and the chain of events that led to the editions of Sword World that we have had.
Yes.
For this episode and for the remaining episodes of this calendar year, we're going to be shifting away from the 2.0 and 2.5 era. Don't worry, we will get to them. And we're going to be shifting into the 1.0 era. Now, there isn't as much material with the 1.0 era, which is why I felt I could squeeze it into the rest of this year. But the other big reason I'm doing it this way is it's important to set a tone. And a lot of things that are standardized in the 2.0 and 2.5 era got their start here. There's also the fact that I want to give some shine to this, because this podcast is meant to be a celebration and an exploration of the totality of Sword World, not just what's getting an official translation soon.
Yes.
So, now, I will note with this, we're going to be covering the world of the 1.0 era in the broad strokes. We will not be getting into specific cities, specific countries, or the like. That is going to happen in the coming weeks. There will be some mention here and there of it, but this is a broad look at Alecrest, and Forcelia. And I think a distinction needs to be made. Forcelia is the name of the setting as a whole. Alecrest is the largest continent, and the continent where most of your adventures are going to take place on. And I had to get a little bit creative when it came to picking art for John for the splash screen, because I didn't want to just reuse the map of Alecrest again after I had used it last time. Not last time, we used it for the first episode in that half and half thing.
Yep.
But for the reference for people who are in the call with me, let me share with you the colorized map of Alecrest. So let me put that in the side chat.
Short-circuited him.
Huh?
We short-circuited you. Or at least I did.
Well, that's just standard procedure for you.
Yes, but this time I short-circuited you so badly you forgot introductions.
Yes, I did. And getting to introductions, we do have my good brothers Hydra, brother Sig, and the bane of my fucking existence, good brother Xanatrix.
You know, abridged introductions are great by themselves. Thank you, Monk. You're welcome for the short circuit.
Just don't let it happen again.
No, he can't let it happen again, because after all, Johnny 5 can only be alive once. Oh wait, that's batteries not included.
Oh.
Yeah. But also is the fact that Johnny 5 is much shorter than me.
Given how tall you are, there's a lot of people who are shorter than you.
Yes.
Yes.
Which is why I said that if I ever go to TwitchCon, I'd be doing nothing but making short jokes. Although, given recent events, if I go to TwitchCon, you would all know about it, because I'd probably get dragged into an incident.
You mean an incident booting somebody who tried to assault a streamer live, and then Twitch said that nothing happened, or that they'd have to review their security bullshit?
Yeah. And TMZ claimed that it was an alleged assault.
Well, okay, no. Now I'm going to be the one playing devil's advocate here. In all fairness, TMZ has to say it that way because the person has not yet been charged or convicted of an assault.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not TMZ's fault, that's legal's fault. And
TMZ actually trying journalism? Shocking.
Oh my god. No, you all know how much I hate legal, but legal still saves my ass from time to time.
Yeah.
And then, let's be frank, a clock is right to twice a day.
A broken clock is indeed right twice a day, yes.
Yep. Now, when it comes to the various areas, you can more or less divide Alecrest into two sides: the western part of the continent and the areas surrounding what's known as the 10 Children, which is the eastern side. Oddly enough, you have a similar thing with Ware's Blade, but I digress. South of that is the Island of the Damned, which, yeah, that's basically Lodos. And on the southwestern side, Farland. Farland is not detailed in any Sword World book that I'm able to find, because it was meant to be a blank slate, i.e., if you want to do a fantasy setting using Sword World rules, but you don't want it to be an Alecrest, that's what Farland is for. And that kind of thing would be carried over into the 2.5 era with the Razaldon continent, which is intentionally left open to interpretation. And I have seen some say that they prefer the setting of Forcelia because of them being old school, but if I'm being honest, the vibe I continue to get from Forcelia doesn't really fit the basic D&D vibe. It fits more of a RuneQuest vibe. I'm not sure if I can fully explain why I get that feeling. I think it mostly has to do with the fact that the visual style still has this kind of mythos approach that you would see more in RuneQuest than you do in say Mystara or Blackmore, or any of the OG settings.
Mm-mm.
That, and Redbox D&D likes to play fast and loose about how much sword and sorcery it is. I would say Forcelia is most definitely a sword and sorcery setting.
Yeah. No. There's a lot. There's definitely that particular. I wouldn't say limited, but dynamic. There's that particular dynamic that you see with sword and sorcery in Forcelia.
Mm-hmm. And one of the other things that would be established within Forcelia is the concept of ages. Now, there are only 3 ages as opposed to the multiple ages you see in 2.0 and 2.5. But this idea of ages that come to a close with these significant upheavals, this is where that starts. We kind of, when we did that study guide that had the opening visual from Sword World PC, some of this was tapped into there. But this is the reason why this particular episode is called the Sword Revolution. So, I suppose we can get into a bit of history. In the beginning. At first, there was only one Titan in the world. This Titan could be considered the creator of all things, though that's all that's really known. The Titan had lived for eternity until it died. When it died, its flesh became the earth, its final breath became the wind, its blood became the seas. Its heart became fire. So, already with that kind of...
Mimir, is that you?
Yeah, that sounds like Mimir.
No, Ymir.
Yeah, Ymir.
The first giant Ymir.
Mm-hmm.
Mimir is different.
Oh yeah. From the fire came the gods. From the right foot of that Titan would come the war god Miri. From the left foot, Chaza, the god of fortune. From the head, Radha, the god of knowledge. From the torso, the earth goddess Martha. From the right arm, the dark god Phalaris. And from the left hand, the supreme god Pharis. Lesser gods were also born, each inheriting a part of the Titan's body. And of course, at the same time, plants sprouted from the Titan's body hair and dragons emerged from its scales. This is how you get the creation myth of the world. And yeah, it's this kind of thing of being born from a dead giant is a very Norse kind of thing.
Yeah. Monk and I wouldn't know anything about that.
And initially, the gods divided the world into 3 parts, organizing the chaos that overflowed from the death of the Titan to create the spirit world, the the material world and the intermediate world, which would also be known as the fairy world. The spirit world is an organization of the chaotic forces that overflowed. The material world was for beings with physical forms to inhabit, and the fairy world to connect those two realms. Through that, they created things like spirits, animals, plants, and eventually the world was completed. They looked on it, and it was good. Okay, not that, but you get the idea.
Yeah, you're just being a jerk.
The sentient beings that were created by the gods were the ancient races. And those ancient races were far more powerful than any human or demi-human race in modern Forcelia. But after that, you have an age of conflict. That's not the proper name for it, but it started with disagreements among the gods that became small conflicts that became full-on wars. Eventually, you had one war that all of the ancient races participated in, divided between the forces of light and darkness. As far as who won that fight, that's not stated, but as an aftermath of it, the gods lost their physical forms and the means to intervene in the material world, becoming purely mental beings. And that is how the Age of the Gods, the Age of Mythology, comes to a close.
Fun stuff.
So there's no preparing for Ragnarok. Ragnarok already happened.
No Fimbulwinter. Denied.
Really? You had to go with the Wayne's World joke?
Yes.
Nope.
Why wouldn't I?
I'm not going to do it.
What aren't you going to do?
But god damn it.
That's usually Monk's thing.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I've gotten it from Sig a few times, especially with the Sandy Peterson joke.
God damn it. No.
But after the Age of Mythology came to a close, we begin the Age of Magic. Because even though many of the ancient races died, and the ones that survived lost a lot of their power, some races survived that apocalypse. The humans, which were said to be created by the gods from their flesh, began to excel in all forms of magic. Supposedly because not only did they get physical form from the gods, but also a tiny portion of the gods' power. So once again, we have the concept of all magic is somehow is tied to divine forces. Which, if I'm being honest, I kind of like that. It's kind of an inversion of the all magic is chaos and therefore dangerous.
I mean, just because its source is divine doesn't mean it's any less dangerous. Let's be honest here.
It could be worse. It could be Warcraft's arcane magic, which is basically an addictive drug.
We love Warcraft's arcane magic.
Yeah.
I do too. It's kind of cool.
But the point is, when it comes to all magic being on some level divine, that's something we don't see as often as other types of sources. In this regard, you could say that. Actually, let me take that back. Zan, would it be fair to say that the idea of all magic is somehow divine in this sense is not far removed from Ki?
No. That's actually still pretty far removed, because the idea of Ki or Chi or prana, whatever you want to call it, from whichever, is the idea of a fundamental energy of the universe that inhabits the body. And then there's, of course, the whole idea of external and internal forces, and that's details we don't need to get into. This would be not so far removed from the Abrahamic religion's beliefs that all ceremonies held by believers with true faith will enact the will of God. Most people boil this down to when Jesus told, I think it was Paul, whatever you hold true on earth, I'll hold true in heaven. And why a normal person who is not an ordained priest can still, for example, bless holy water or bless water to holy water if they have strong enough faith.
Mm-hmm.
That would be more likened to that. Or, just the fact that all magic comes from the gods. We just have to look to Shintoism and the kami.
Yeah, but this is also a reason why I stated 2 weeks ago that the magic system within Sword World has more in common with the magic system in RuneQuest than it does with D&D.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if anybody at Group S&E was also playing RuneQuest, but given that basic role-playing already had a foothold in Japan, it wouldn't shock me. Because given all the stuff that Group S&E was doing, I have a hard time believing they were only playing one system internally.
Yeah.
But there were some ancient humans who were said to be half divine. And I think it's more of the fact that some humans had more of the divine spark than others. But all humans were created by the gods.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the Age of Mythology, there was a dark age that lasted hundreds, perhaps even thousands of years. But eventually, a kingdom was established. The first proper kingdom. That being the kingdom of Castul. This is also referred to as the Ancient Kingdom. If some of you remember the Grey Witch, that particular motherfucker, she is from that kingdom. Although, given the amount of body hopping she did over the centuries, how much of her is still she is up to interpretation.
I mean, they tell you not to stick your dick in crazy, but if you have multiple lives and memories in your head, does that mean you're sticking your dick in multiple crazies? I can hear the disappointment.
Yes. Of course you can. Of course you can. Of course you can. Disappointment because apparently Woodchuck didn't get that lesson because at the end of the first book, when everybody's like, destroy the amulet, so that she can't come back. He's like, no, I'm keeping this. And then he ended up becoming another one of Carla's hosts.
That's gotta be awkward.
It was only for a little while because after Woodchuck died, she ended up jumping to another host.
Well, I know. Just saying that's gotta be awkward.
Mm-hmm. But the Ancient Kingdom was pretty much marked the dawn of the Age of Magic. And it was a place where the ruling class were the Rune Masters. I already talked about how any form of magic aside from the effects of priests is referred to as runes, and regardless of which class you end up taking of the two main casting ones, you are considered a rune master. Hence why Louis, who is a magic swordsman, is referred to as a rune soldier. In his many particular affairs, whether or not you're taking sorcerer or shaman, it's still a form. And I have to correct myself. Sorcerers were the ones who were using the particular magic. Shamans are the ones who are utilizing spirit magic, and of course priests use the power of the gods, with dark priests and dragon priests using the power of the dark gods and dragons. But the latter two are GM exclusive. We'll get into that in a future episode. But collectively, all of the casting classes are referred to as Rune Master skills. This is because, as we've mentioned in the past, classes are referred to as skills. But there was a kind of pseudo caste system. I'm pretty sure we've all seen certain fantasy settings where the proficiency you have with magic, the bigger social status you have, and those who cannot use magic are treated lower than dirt. I'm certain we can all think of at least one example in various forms of fantasy fiction that falls into that category. For me personally, I suppose I could put in certain magic themed shonen work, but also things like Neo Vane in Lunar 2, because of course I'm going to reference Lunar 2 with this. But there's a few others that can come to mind. But if you did not have magical ability or just had a little bit of it, you were either banished to the wastes, or you were treated as a slave. And this particular era, the Age of Magic, is where the three main magic systems came to be. The ancient magic that was used by sorcerers, spirit magic, which was used by shamans, and holy magic, which was used by priests. And there were many, many, many works that were created during this time. You know, things like floating cities, because every fantasy setting should have at least one floating city.
We love floating cities in this household.
Yes.
Even some magisters, magic users, being able to have full-grown dragons as their own servants.
Do they have the dragon's crown?
It's impossible to know. But
Damn.
You know, Xander, I remember when we did the monastic therapy for FF16, we talked about how the dependence on the crystals was so much that it was an excessive dependence.
Yes.
And you kind of have that here.
Yeah, so just to run that down, all innovation and desire to innovate was lost by nearly the entire populace except few, an except few such as Blackthorn, um, who was learning to forge without using fire crystals and instead used a neat little invention he and Sid came up with called a bellows. Just ignoring the fact that the bellows was invented before, automatic furnaces by like 1,000+ years. Anyway, the point is that this over dependence on something stifles creativity because of the convenience. That's usually what the lesson is.
Yeah, and a case in point. And this isn't spoiling because it's right in the first minute.
Late sheep is late, but she is here.
Ah, yes. And
I come in peace and with the wrath of a sheeper.
This does, however, mean that you are the winner of the Doku challenge. And while I get her reactive, Sam, would you mind giving the skinny on the Doku challenge since this is her first time with that?
Doku is a good friend of ours, a man who has a drinking solution for every problem in the world, and is constantly, almost habitually, perhaps even compulsively late to podcasts he joins us on. Thus, if you win the Doku challenge, you are late and gay.
Oh,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if
I
you were
mean
already.
true.
I was gonna say I didn't know if you were already the second part or not, but
Oh.
On the internet, it's about a 90-10 chance that any of the women you meet are either FBI agents or gay.
Yeah, but
My greeting is literally hi. I am Maki. I love women.
And to catch you up on a bit, we are for this particular episode we're going into the broad strokes of the world of Forcelia, and in subsequent episodes we'll be going into more specific parts. We're midway into talking about the Age of Magic, after talking about the Age of Mythology, which the Age of Mythology with the death of the Titan is very Norse, and it reinforces what I said, that early Sword World has more in common with RuneQuest than it does with D&D in terms of its setting. Well, the fact that it has a setting certainly differentiates, but
a setting that it doesn't hem and haw about.
But instead of hemming and hawing about its style, Forcelia is most definitely sword and sorcery. And I will always appreciate a directness of that. Although we did make the joke that Ragnarok is denied because Ragnarok already happened. That was what caused the Age of the Gods to end.
Still sad, but that face win no Fimbulwinter.
If I really need it, I just have to wait. I just have to wait about 5 months. But the big reason why humans were able to excel in magic is due to humans being created from the flesh and spirit of the gods. So even if we don't have these swords of Genesis, we do have that idea of magic all being on some level divine. But moving back into it, the Age of Magic is where we get the Kingdom of Castul, which I guess one could argue is the first true kingdom. Though with how big it is and how much influence it had, it is borderline an empire. And yes, the sorcerers who had the majority control were known as wizard kings. I don't know if anyone at Group S&E played Dark Sun, but I do have to wonder if somebody was taking notes. Let me see when Dark Sun first came out. Okay, so probably not, because Dark Sun wouldn't come out until 1991.
From my side, I can definitely mention that you might be able to spot, generally speaking, a bunch of inspirations. Also think Western inspirations also.
Yeah, one of the big ones that I brought up before.
As people who made stuff and lore, namely, are all huge fantasy nerds.
Oh yeah. In fact, one of the things that I talked about early on is that a lot of the people working on Sword World and other projects were more nerds of fantasy fiction rather than history nerds. And I think that is reflected in the choices in game design. In my opinion, all the better for it. Because a lot of the bad habits with the OSR are born of a culture of history nerds more than anything else, and fans of like historical reenactments and the wargaming scene of the 70s. That's something Zan and I we've talked about, and Sig and I we've talked about, given how we keep saying fuck the grogs.
For the most part, I'm pretty neutral towards them.
Oh.
I just don't like their mindset.
But I'd also brought up that I'm pretty sure we can all think of a few settings where there's almost a caste system based on how proficient you are with magic. You know, the highest nobility are the ones who are the most proficient with magic, and the ones who can't use magic are treated lower than dirt. The example I brought up was Neo Vane in Lunar 2, but I'm pretty sure we can think of a few others. But things like floating skies and floating cities, and being able to command fully grown dragons as if they were pets, I think is a representation of how excessively dependent Castul was on magic.
Mm-hmm.
And I liken it to, and this happened before you came in, Maki. I liken it to the magic dependency that is seen in Final Fantasy XVI, where a crystal is being used just to pour water into somebody's cup.
Yeah, that's in the very beginning of the game too, during the tutorial sequence.
Which, it doesn't look like much when you first see it, but when you think about it as you go on, you realize that is completely and utterly wasteful.
Yeah, especially considering we know that. Especially considering what you find out throughout the game, it becomes even more wasteful. It's like, just find a way to draw the water from where it's supposed to be.
They had a well that was using a crystal instead of, well, digging a proper well.
Yeah, that was later on.
Mm-hmm.
But the big thing is that over-reliance on magic led to widespread panic when magic started fucking up.
Mm-hmm. And magic fucking up isn't exactly what ended up happening. But what did happen was, was the fact that after the ancient kingdom had fallen due to the very magical power that had founded it. And when it fell, the wizard kings and leaders who survived had separated. I shouldn't say survived, but what ended up happening with the end of the Age of Magic was a rebellion of the same non-magical users that they had either enslaved or abandoned. You know, some formed barbarian hordes, some were just a massive slave uprising. And though, even if they didn't have the same magical abilities, they had a robust life that made up for it. There is an implication that the two groups were different even as species, but probably not. But that new kingdom that formed after the end of the kingdom of Castul is one where rune mastery has significantly decreased. While magic still exists, a lot of spells have been lost, and matters are more through military might. Hence the name of this new kingdom, the Age of Sword, or Sword World. And it's for that reason that I titled this episode of the podcast "The Sword Revolution." Now, as far as the world itself,
There's an unintentional pun in there somewhere.
yeah, and whoever finds it will be punished.
The world revolves around the sun. The world is Sword World. Sword Revolution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If it is a pun by intent, I blame you, Zan, and Alm.
Ooh, dodged a bullet on that one.
For now.
Son of a bitch.
You walked into that one like a rake. As if you're Sideshow Bob in front of a room full of rakes.
I'll find a way out. I always do.
But the big reason I point out this kind of multiple ages thing is one of the things that I remember you mentioning, Maki, and I've mentioned it as well with Sword World, is the idea of a world that has survived multiple apocalypses. The Foundation was present even all the way back in the first edition. Now,
I personally find it inspiring.
Which I do.
There's a theme going on here in terms of life goes on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The apocalypse happened, but the world didn't end.
Oh, that's because we're too stubborn to give up.
But I don't know. Given some of my so-called colleagues, I have to wonder how many of them are too stubborn to give up. But that's more of a performative question. regardless, the continent of Aelcras is implied to be a small part of Forcelia. But it's believed that the world outside of Forcelia barely exists, though some sages say there are other realms. And there is of course the physical realm, the spirit realm, and the intermediate realm, also known as the fairy realm. But it is considered a flat world, another thing that conjures up RuneQuest, which had the world as a cube in the sea of space. RuneQuest's lore is wild, and I do hope to get into it one day. But the point is, the world of Forcelia is considered flat. The four corners of the square point to the east, west, north, and south. At those corners...
In other words,
Oh, go ahead.
in other words, if the flat earthers were right.
At the edge of these corners are gates that seal off the world. Those gates are tied to different elements. In the north is the Gate of Ice, sealed by mountains of ice that are infinitely tall. It's also been theorized that it should be called the Gate of Earth. To the south is the Gate of Fire, sealed by scorching flames. To the east is the Gate of Wind, sealed by fierce storms. To the west is the Gate of Water, though it's said that this gate is unsealed, forming an infinitely tall waterfall from the void, which is where the world's oceans come from. It is also believed that the Aelcras continent is in the far northern part of the world of Forcelia. But this idea of elemental gates at the edges of the world, oddly enough, I am immediately reminded of Exalted, which very much does that. When it comes to how creation works, you have the elemental poles, and the further you go out there, the more raw element it is until you go way out into the wild, which you don't want to go there. The wild hates anything that has consistent shape.
You know, do you know what it reminds me of, Monk?
Shoot.
The Deathgate cycle.
Would you mind expanding?
So, the Deathgate cycle is a series of books by Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman of Dragonlance fame that explores a world fractured into technically multiple worlds based on the elements thereof. So that whole splitting things off into different themed worlds based on their element also reminds me of, you know, how different gates spawn the one thing into where they're supposed to be.
I can see it.
I'm being very general because despite the fact that these are over 30-year-old books, I love the Deathgate cycle and think everyone should read them.
Mm-hmm. That being said, when it comes to the world proper, you still have one sun, you still have one moon, you still have the stars in the sky. The sun is ruled by Faris, the supreme god, the god born from the Titan's left hand. Some say the sun is Faris's lost body, which veers way too close to the unconquered sun for my liking. The moon is controlled by Faris's younger brother Fennes, the god of cycles. Some claim that the stars are shattered bodies of the gods, but that's not taken too serious. The place where the sun, stars, and moon exist is called the Star Realm, which is believed what the world of Forcelia floats within. Again, I keep calling back to RuneQuest. But climate is what one would expect, but there is a tie between climate and spirit power.
For some reason, when you say God of Cycles, I imagine God of Motorcycles. And that'd be the coolest god ever.
She's not wrong.
I feel like at least one setting I've covered in the past had that, or at least had a god who would be riding on everything and probably look like a White Scars Space Marine. Either that or the demon Doom Rider. And Doom Rider is now gone because someone rolled a 1. I love that people took a demon that was fucking useless and memed it into legend. But
As they do.
on Alecrest, the north is colder considered because of its proximity to the Gate of Ice, while the south is more temperate due to being closer to the Gate of Fire. You have a standard year divided into 4 seasons. The first season is a winter dominated by ice spirit power. The spring that follows is dominated by water spirit power. You have a hot summer from the fire spirit power, and an autumn with its particular winds. So you have 4 seasons, each of them tied to an elemental spirit. There are some places that are locked in particular weathers year round. You know, where it's constantly winter or constantly summer. All of this is considered tied to spirit power. So, given that, you could say that people who study the spirit world or the fairy world, or people who study spirits, are studying the weather, almost making the shamans akin to druids in the classical sense, rather than the whole wild shaping kind of druid.
Yeah, you're talking about the stewards of nature from Celtic domain.
Yes. Now, when it comes to the calendar, originally the world was supposed to be eternal. But before the world was completed, the gods fought amongst themselves and lost their physical form. We talked about that. That's how the Age of Myth ended. The 4 gates that were supposed to completely seal the world, one of them is open, as I mentioned before, the Western Gate. It's believed that the oceans and the world's elements are flowing out because of the open water gate. And because of that, time exists. The implication being the whole world is a water clock.
And that means that when time runs out, so do they.
Mm-hmm.
That tracks.
Oh.
And that's good. It's nice to have some skin in the game.
There is a apocalyptic myth that eventually the world will flow through the gate of water and fall into the void.
The ducky fell out of the bathtub, monk. That is the first thing that came to my head when I read that.
But present day is considered the year 520 in the New Kingdom. So 520 years after the
Hey,
fall of
Timmy,
Kestul.
don't play with this planet. Put it back into the weird gate.
But the New Kingdom calendar was used after the fall of Kestul. And of course, they don't feel like reinventing the wheel. So a year is divided into 12 months. A month is 30 days. Every month is 30 days. No 31s or 29s here. Because it is corresponding to one lunar cycle. which, when you're dealing with God knows how many ancient cultures, calendars were more moon-based than sun-based, depending on where you were. I know that there's some that were sun-based.
There are still calendars in modern day that are moon-based.
Yes.
The most ubiquitous of which being the Chinese lunar calendar, used to, track their lunar zodiac, their zodiac through the year, and also to let us know when the new year is, which is why their new year is like at the beginning of February.
Mm-hmm.
And there used to be calendars as well as here in real life that every month was 28 days, and we had 13 months instead of our new standard 12.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of reasons for that. A lot of calendars that were inaccurate. I think one incarnation of the Gregorian calendar was off by 11 minutes each year. Which eventually built up, and they just skipped 10 whole days. But
hey, Monk, we can't, yeah?
He probably had a hiccup on his transmission.
Yeah, Discord decided to be less than gentlemen. But
Discord decided to fuck up.
Because of that setup, if a specific date is expressed, it'll be written as year X of the new kingdom calendar, month Y, day Z. Obviously, a day is divided into 24 hours, an hour into 60 minutes. But in universe, hours and minutes are rarely used. Or rather, I should say, hours and minutes are used, but seconds, not so much. Now, when it comes to the various kingdoms, a lot of them are ruled by hereditary monarchs. The kingdoms will vary in size. Some of them are simple city-states. Others are full-on kingdoms ruling over at least 10 cities. There are also free cities that are independent from kings and nations and are sometimes governed by priests. But for the most part, you have the standard king at the top, nobles and knights forming the ruling class, and common citizens below them. Some have a serf class below that, but they are rare cases.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't need to explain what a king is for these kind of things, but I do like that in the book it does go into the fact that there are laws even kings have to follow. But below that, of course, you have nobles and knights and then citizens, which work the way you'd expect in any medieval fantasy setup. Separate from those are things like intellectuals, clergy, and merchants. And of course, where player characters come in, there are adventurers. And hello there, Porkchop. I see you in the chat. Now, the view of adventurers depends on what place they're in. Some places they're viewed in the same way as other classes. In other places, they might be viewed as criminals.
Yes, I see.
And thank you for the resub, Brian. Hope you enjoy the ad-freeness and the shenanigans.
Pork chop.
But technically speaking, depending on background, some adventurers might be criminals.
I mean, you never know what someone's done to get a quick bit of gold.
Mm-hmm. But when it comes to But even with the 1.0 era, one particular thing that there is a presence of is the idea of adventuring being a profession. It isn't as highly structured as what you would see in the 2.0 era, but
At the
it does
end of the
exist.
day, I just imagine adventurers as sort of legal mercenaries.
More or less. And as a bit of an aside, I got into a bit of a tiff a month ago with someone who insisted that the whole Adventurers Guild and taking requests thing was something that was born out of MMOs and isekais. That is not the case. You have, even in things like Fafhrd the Grey Mouser, you had things like the Slayers Guild. And for all intents and purposes, an Adventurers Guild in that sense is not too different from a trade guild you would see in any medieval city.
Yep.
You know, a trade guild which would be the middleman between people who wanted to commission particular works and the tradesmen who would do those works. Obviously, that is a vast simplification.
I mean,
Adventurers
if we-
Guild as a concept existed for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
It's often used as a social hub and a convenient spot to collect important characters and allow for easier facilitation of story and motivation.
Yeah.
Well, it also directly correlates to something seen in real life throughout history. Yes, we have the whole you all meet in a tavern thing, and yes, taverns are a social hub where you can gather some information, but information brokers generally hide in plain sight as something else. The Adventurers Guild in this case is just a much more formalized information broker. So formalized they even have a structure on how you get that information and how you can get better information, because ranking an adventurer is ranking their competency and thus trusting them with better information, aka the quests.
Mm-hmm.
That's just one example of how Adventurers Guilds work. Information brokers are the lifeblood of any group that wants to act in a major fashion within any place that has a social structure and governance. And as Porkchop points out, nobody goes to the Thieves Guild, they go to the Salt Guild, who happen to be the thieves.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing here with information brokers and other such things.
Yeah.
The groups, the formalization and publicization, I guess is the best way, because they make it very public that there's adventurers guilds and thus adventurers, is a way to introduce transparency into what is normally a guarded and very opaque profession.
Mm-hmm.
And that arises when a need for trustworthiness is actually expressed.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, the adventurers, some of them might be criminals. It might have, I'm guessing most adventurers commit some small amounts of criminal acts, from anything to breaking and entering to, well, grave robbing. But it's part of information gathering at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And solving problems.
Yeah. And I should note that when it comes to traveling between countries, at most you might have to deal with a passage tax. Breaking through checkpoints is a crime, but it's a crime that isn't punished too severely in peacetime situations. Though, since conditions can vary between countries, you shouldn't always assume that. Especially if you're going from the east to the west.
Mm-hmm.
Or vice versa. It's not. There's a complicated relationship, and speaking of, within Ailcrest there are plenty of professional guilds. Anyone who's an artisan has to belong to one. If you're not a member, you can't learn trade-specific skills, and you can't conduct business with those skills. Guilds are typically national, but that just means that a member of a trade guild might not be as recognized in another country. On the other hand, being a guild member in one country might give you certain privileges in other countries. And as one might expect, they are sustained by a master and apprentice relationship. Though masters themselves aren't going to be doing a lot of talking with each other because they don't want their particular knowledge or trade secrets getting leaked to others.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there isn't a merchant's guild because I'm not Seth Zientz. Hey, people.
Hey, people, Seth here. That's my
Oh,
best
God,
imitation.
no.
And it's terrible.
Yeah. However,
I'm not a warlord from Africa who snuck his way over here.
However, in order to become a merchant, you have to register with a king. Those who are approved get a permit, that being the merchant's license. If you don't have one, you can't open a shop in that kingdom legally. If you conduct business in public without a license, you will be in trouble.
What form this trouble takes depends on the kingdom.
Mm-hmm. Now, of course, a merchant's license that you get in one country isn't valid in all countries. But if you wish...
Don't get me started on concealed carry permits.
But it doesn't. But if you do have a license in one country,
Especially if the country doesn't like another country.
Mm-hmm. If they're on good terms, the worst you might have to do is just a standard fee. Same with guilds. Worst case scenario, you may be treated as if you had no license at all. Even worse case, and get punished from either, depending on the situation, maybe a flogging, maybe being put in the stocks and having everyone throw shit at you, sometimes literal, or becoming very, very lighter because you no longer have to worry about the rest of your body below your neck.
Mm.
Now, the Thieves Guild and the Sorcerers Guild are not official guilds, but they are recognized organizations. They're global organizations, or at least continent-wide ones, that will exchange information between headquarters and branches. If you are a thief, a sorcerer, or a sage, you probably belong to one of them. The Thieves Guild controls supposedly a large amount of the criminal underworld of nations. It is highly structured, with members having their different obligations, including tribute payments. And it's easy to get in, it's not so easy to get out. But you do get particular protection. So, yeah, the Thieves Guild is the mob.
Or the Yakuza.
The Sorcerers Guild, on the other hand, is not as restricted and is more of a cooperative for development. An academic society, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Advice on sorcery is readily available, but maybe a little less so in more tense times. So essentially, when it comes to the Sorcerers Guild, I would say it wouldn't be too far removed from a classical university.
Well, and once again, you are correct. This also plays into something we talked about a long time ago with one of our Building the Equation episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Creating governing bodies, because that's what a guild essentially is, a governing regulatory body, to standardize the competency and particular skill sets for whatever profession they represent, is something that I think arises just naturally. And at the Sorcerer's Guild being an academy, they probably just were an academy at first.
Mm-hmm.
And then they realized, wow, we've got a lot of people who are doing this magic stuff. Maybe we should make that something a little more regimented, well-regulated. And I mean well-regulated in the old style, as in well-kept.
Mm-hmm.
It certainly would be better to go ahead and teach kids how to use magics instead of, accidentally blowing your arm off.
Yeah. Especially given all the superstitions,
Or the city.
since you
Or
have
the world.
you have the fact that that magic is still tied to the ancient kingdom and the overthrow
gods.
of that ancient kingdom and the gods. So you have a lot of superstitions among common folk regarding magic. And of course, since the gods exist and are known, you
love Japanese media and our weird obsession with fighting God.
I know a lot of people have memed about that, but I think a lot of people who do bring up that as some sort of joke, or in worst cases a cudgel, should really not throw stones in that glass house, especially when you consider certain final bosses in various the RPGs.
Or, in Doom. I mean, after all, killing an outer god is kind of something.
Fighting God, or gods, or divinity, or whatever else you want to call it, is a natural thing all humans like to talk about, because it's not so much about fighting the god, it is about fighting what they perceive as something trying to control their life. The whole thing about fighting God is an extension of self-actualization and the fight against fate and the fight against the idea that everything is predetermined.
And I remember when we did the Everway Persona project, we played with that, with the idea of fate being the quote-unquote villain.
Yes.
Which, if I ever do a Persona-themed campaign, I'm going to be revisiting that.
I mean, to be fair. It's sort of the most universal stand up for yourself and fight against fate. It's often related to the feeling of repression and lack of ability to express yourself in our society.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And let's be frank, how often have we all dreamt of giving the gods or whatever the middle finger?
Oh, all the time.
Dream of it. What are you talking about? I do it every day. My life is one giant burning middle finger at every god that exists.
I am now Mokushima Frank Q.
But obviously, because of the fact that gods are a known thing that exists, and divine events are known on some level, it means religious organizations have a significant amount of power. In many countries, they don't have much power over secular authority, but there are theocratic states that do. And members of a clergy do have a degree of status protection, and if you can prove being a member of a clergy, which usually a uniform can certainly do that, you can be assumed to receive some degree of protection.
Kind of hard to say your god doesn't exist when you have some clerics who can point at a location and say, "Daddy, can you smack them at their guard?"
Yeah.
Only just smack him? Honestly, why not just go ahead and disintegrate?
Hmm.
Just remember, sometimes there's that man who's too angry to die and then will then fight and kill your god.
Yep.
On more than one occasion.
And instance.
Hmm.
Guts is still trying to do it. He's trying to kill 5 of them.
But because of that, there's ways to verify a given social status. And when it comes to getting a bit into the world itself, you do have a few different regions within Aelcrest, as well as the islands that surround it. And let me see if I can add in that particular image that I shared with you guys earlier.
Yep.
Or at least add it in so the people watching can see it.
Where you see all of the fun stuff.
Mm-hmm. Looks like I'm gonna.
I'm going to sue Chaos Land for IP infringement.
So, give me a minute, because when I
Infringement.
Infringement.
Nope. Low-hanging fruit, not gonna do that one.
Yeah, I'm not touching that one.
Okay. Not the best, but close enough. Oh. I can't go in full resolution, obviously.
Because otherwise it'll be all distorted.
Mm-hmm. But on the far east end, you have the Mardon language, which is usually spoken. There are 3 countries here: Mudil, Milargo, and Anoth. This is known as the farthest kingdom. And it tends to have some distinctive galleys that are essentially merchant ships that are heavily armed, even ones even more armed than pirate ships. They often go along the southern coast. You also have in Mudil the Goblin Woods, which some people go in if they feel lucky, because there's a lot of magical beasts in that area, which, as some of you are aware, magical beasts are on the higher end of monster threats. It can include things like a measly Thunderbird up to a fucking dragon.
Measly Thunderbird.
Yeah. I'm grading on a curve here, but within Milargo,
Clearly.
you have essentially a kingdom that's a confederation of a bunch of nomadic tribes, and is not so much run by a king as much as it is a tribal council. But it is considered by some a picture of freedom, though others may consider it a very weak authority. it is also the homeland of the Grass Runners. And Anoth is also known as the Holy Kingdom, and it has forests as essentially state religion. Most citizens are followers of forests. The Forest Temple is considered one of the largest temples on the continent. And of course, the ruler of Anoth has the title of Pope. But unlike other kings, the Pope position is not hereditary. Anoth also has one of the most powerful knightly orders in Alecraft, known as the Knights of Justice. And those of you who remember a certain cartoon in the 90s are probably getting flashbacks.
Oh dear.
Also, that cartoon is an isekai. That probably pissed off some of the old fans of that show.
Well, you're not
LOL.
wrong.
I rarely am, and yet people are always surprised by it.
I mean, we've already pissed off quite a few people by stating that John Carter is an isekai.
Yeah? But then you have the northeast part of the Alecrest continent. This is the common language spoken there is an Eastern dialect, or also Mardon. There are 3 countries there: Lorderville, Balikal, and Filsis. Lorderville used to be a very agrarian country that was pretty poor up until the Iron Queen, June the 5th, ascended to the throne and turned what was an agriculture-based state into a powerful military state. It has a large population with about 500,000, so about one third of its population just in the capital of Chase. Moreover, they are completely anti-magic. The queen is charismatic but also cruel, and considers anyone from other nations not within her own as slaves. So yeah, lovely person to be in their country. But Baikal is another country that was formed through a bunch of different tribes, each creating their own towns. There is a bit of conflict there between the maritime tribes of the north versus the plains-based tribes of the south. Mostly because one generates profit through trade and piracy, and the other doesn't. And while they do have a king, he's a figurehead. The real ruler is the pirate king. And of course, the galleys there form a very powerful nation. But then you have things like Physis, which is more of a city-state. Some of the bigger countries have a population of like 1 million to 1.5 million. Physis only has a population of 40,000. It is mostly sustained through commerce and guild trade. It has been attacked by Lorderville and has repelled those attacks repeatedly. It's one of the more fortified city-states on the continent. What also
I
helps
suppose that's the advantage.
Mm-hmm.
Having a smaller territory means that you could easily cover every square mile of it.
Mm-hmm. it also helps having a very proficient military advisor named Lukial, who has the nickname of the chess player. But at the present time, he ended up leaving the city, which leads to rumors that their survival is in jeopardy. And south and east of that is an ancient ruined city, which might have treasures of the ancient kingdom, but it is also overrun with undead and ghosts. And the age-old, those who go into it don't come out. And then there is Oran, which is one of the larger spots on that side of the continent. Oran's has about 2 million, with 100,000 in the capital. It is an advanced city, one that has full-scale water and sewage systems. It also has one of the earliest sorcerers' guilds. And its grandmaster, someone known as Mana Rai, had coined the term mana and essentially built the foundation for magic systems as they're known within the world. There is also, in the northern part of that region, there is a fallen city from the ancient kingdom that fell from the sky when the kingdom fell. And there are plenty of treasures within that place, and it's also overrun with magical beasts, so good luck.
Oh god, I'm reminded of Dalmaran from Warcraft. It never fell.
But as you go westward along the southern coast, you end up in the place that's known as the Central Region, which is largely held by two city-states, Emir and Sinai. The former is known as the Kingdom of Craftsmen. The latter is known as the Kingdom of Lakesides. The former is of course one where the Craftsmen Guild hold a lot of pull, while Sinai has more agricultural parts of its setup.
And no small amount of water either.
Mm-hmm. Because of Lomar and another one of their neighbors, Orphan, having not the best relationship, Sinai is preparing for war. But further north of Emir is the Khan Desert, also known as the Desert of Malice. And if you listen close, you can hear someone playing that Star Trek II clip. I'm not going to do the joke because I can't do William Shatner. I'm not Canadian enough for that.
I'm Canadian and even I wouldn't do it.
But yeah, the Khan Desert is right in the lower middle part of Alecrest. And while it is a desert, there are plenty of creatures that have adapted to it, and plenty of nomadic tribes that have adapted to it as well. They usually travel as merchants or performers throughout the continent, but they will maintain their own way of life instead of adapting to other countries' customs. They are also very secretive. some of them may have sent assassins to those who try and uncover their secrets or witness certain rituals. And those assassins are very good at spirit magic. They may or may not be taking hashish in the process. If you know, you know.
Well, that's actually one thing I've always liked about the assassins as an archetype. It doesn't always have to be cloak and daggers. You could just as easily kill somebody with magic.
Well, whenever it comes to the idea of an assassin's guild, I think a lot of people think of one approach when there's multiple ways. And if there's one setting I think that has a strong handle on the idea of multiple ways to assassinate, honestly, it's the assassin temples in 40K. Because if somebody needs to be dealt with by the assassins, the question is, okay, which kind of assassin do we send out? Because what kind of message do we want to send? Do we want to have them shot from half a mile away? Or do we want to have them conveniently poisoned? Or do we want to send an Eversor? Which is an assassin in name only.
Or abandon all hope. If you know, you know.
So if I were to show what the aftermath of an Eversor assassin looks like, I'd probably get kicked off of every streaming platform I stream on.
Honestly, if you just wanted probably a lazy comparison, just picture Doomslayer.
Ooh. There probably won't even be jibs afterwards.
No. But when we get to the northern part of the central region, you have a massive desert of empty, along with the nations of Orphan and Ramalurth. Orphan was founded by Rijal, also known as the Dragon Slayer, and considered the strongest swordsman in Aelcrast. He got that title after defeating the evil dragon Kurish, a dragon that destroyed the kingdom of Fan. And in the civil war that ensued, he ended up marrying Queen Melte and established the new kingdom of Orphan, thus giving it the nickname the Kingdom of Heroes. It started out small, but has expanded its territory and has a population of 1.5 million. Its aristocracy only recognizes knights who serve the king, as opposed to some of the more autonomous knights and nobles you might see in other regions. There is also a mining city in that country known as Godon, it has a lot of dwarves, as one might expect.
Mm-hmm.
But it has historical tensions with Fandaria, another fragment of the Fan Kingdom, and Sine, because it gave protection to the nobles that led the civil war. But it is allied with Ramalurth, which has sparked rumors of a large-scale war coming. Ramalurth is one of the oldest kingdoms in Aelcrast, also known as the Magical Kingdom. It is called that because not just because it has a lot of sorcerers, but every king in its history has been some rune master. Along with having probably the most powerful magic sword in Aelcrast, the Van Blade. And as I'm The big reason why the desert to the east of Ramalurth is called the Desert of Empty is because the spirit powers are too strong there. And in fact, because of that, no spirit powers work there at all. Also within Ramalurth is the Unicorn Forest. And within that forest there is a village of druids who don't poach in their forest if you know what's good for you.
Indeed.
And yes, of course, the Unicorn Forest has unicorns as well as other magical beasts. But the southern central part, which the common language there is usually a Western dialect of Trade Common or Gundar, has the nations of Fandaria and Lomar. The former is sometimes called the Kingdom of Chaos. I'm pretty sure Zan's lawyer is on standby.
I don't need a lawyer. I'm just going to steal it back from them. It's not that hard. I'll just out chaos them.
But Fandaria was the other kingdom that was born out of the death of the Fan Kingdom. Both it and Orphan want to reunify the Fan Kingdom, but they don't agree on to how that's supposed to be done. And while Fandaria does have a king, he's just a puppet. The real power is in things like the Thieves Guild, the Assassin League, and some of the Dark God cults. Hence its name, the Kingdom of Chaos. It is the only place where there is a state-recognized temple of Phalaris, the god that would be referred to as Faris in the 2.0 era, the Mad God. But within that region is also Lomar, the Kingdom of Travelers. Often called that because within it is the Road of Free People, which connects the eastern and western parts of Aelcrest. And leads to and going along that road will get you through Orphan and Ramalurth. Lormar has a strong military, but it's mostly composed of mercenaries. And at one point, a neighboring country, Rede, tried to invade them. It backfired, and Rede was annexed. Which, can you think of losing heart? Can you think of a kind of losing harder than that? Not only did you get your ass kicked, you lost your country in the process. But within Lomar, you find a northern and southern region. The north is where a lot of the nobles and merchants live. The south is where a lot of normal citizens live. There's also a lot of marketplaces, including a black market, where you can get just about anything if you know the right guy. Including things that shouldn't be available in public, like unicorn horns. Lomar also has a full-on arena. Like a full-on gladiatorial arena. Some people are indentured into it, and others choose to do it for the pay. And of course, nobles have their own sponsored gladiators. Those of you who've looked at Roman history, you know how this goes. People having different stables.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Rede itself has been redubbed the City of Mercenaries, where a lot of the major power is in the Mercenary Guild. They also trade in a lot of magic weapons and armor, which makes sense for a bunch of mercenaries. But on the western side of things, you have a few more small city-states. A lot of the major political power is held by the nations in the east. And the and of course the reason that there isn't an overrun is because of something called the Tidal Alliance.
Mm-hmm.
Wherein, if the Eastern powers invaded, all 10 city-states on the west would unite in response. This resulted in the Western countries getting the nickname the 10 Children. We'll get to them later this year. But the 10 Children are Promse, Tidel, Tolerant, Raban, Beldin, Gulgaris, Goba, Refero, Dreknol, and Zarn. At the end, this is also where the end of the Road of the Free People is, where there is a village called Palmer. It was established as a settlement by the workers who completed the road, and is a village of mostly humans who speak the Eastern languages. Now, at the southeastern part of Aelcrast is the islands of Azarn, which the total population of those islands is about 800,000. It was once a single nation, but has been divided into 3 countries. Though, and this is where things get tricky when it comes to some of these places, because this isn't in any book proper. It is in a scenario collection, the Rainbow Crystal Palace. Which, unfortunately, that scenario collection, at the time we were streaming this, has not been translated. Of course, much further to the south is the Island of the Damned. There is limited trade with the Island of the Damned and Aelcrast proper, and some of you may also know it as the Accursed Island. And again, the details of that place, as well as the 3 eras that it's gone through, we will get to later this year.
Yeah.
Since you brought it up earlier, far to the west is Chaos Land. There is not a whole lot of info on it. A lot of it was in the novels Dawn of Chaos and Land of Chaos. When the complete guide came out, Land of Chaos was ongoing. Unfortunately, those particular books have not been translated, and those novels aren't going to be translated probably for quite some time. So as far as what is within Chaos Land, it's going to be a while before we ascertain that. And the island at the edge of the east, East End, is another one of those unknown places. The complete guide talks about plans for that to be revealed in the future, but I don't know if it ever was. That's something I'd have to check. And of course, as I mentioned, there is one blank spot on the west off of Aelcrast, known as Farland. And I do want to read off what the complete guide says about Farland, because it is an interesting little backdoor that they put in. Farland the unreachable land. No one knows what kind of place Farland is. This is because Farland is a place that is, quote, never to be defined in lore. One of the joys of role-playing games is that game masters and their gaming companions can create their own world from scratch through gameplay. Sword World RPG has a common background world called the Alecrest Continent, which prevents it from offering this enjoyment. Farland was created to address this dilemma. Farland is a region for which we, the creators, will never release official settings. Therefore, you can create your own world however you like. This will never conflict with official announcements. Of course, even for the Alecrest continent, you may ignore some or all of our official announcements. I really like this move.
It is a very good move. I do like it.
A lot of
Leaving it
people
out?
criticize games that have a particular campaign setting as being too restrictive, i.e., they can't tell their own stories within it. There are some settings I can see this being a problem. As much as I like L5R, it's not the most flexible when it comes to what you can do in that regard. And to a certain extent, I can see that with BattleTech as well. Especially BattleTech, given the 1,000 years of history it has. Well, 1,000 plus, I should note. But by providing a place like this, a backdoor is provided where you can integrate other fantasy materials. And I always like it when a game does that, where it acknowledges that it's not giving you a full picture of the entirety of its world, just a lot of it to build around. Yes, I know some people prefer building their own world, but if I'm being honest, some people who tell me that it feels like a pointless flex, for lack of a better term. Am I making sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, makes perfect sense.
Because yes, I get it. Some people prefer that, but that doesn't mean that people who need a bit of a starting gate shouldn't be thrown under the bus. Now, obviously the last thing to bring up is currency. The main form of currency is not a gold standard, but actually a silver standard. That being Gamma. It is called that because it was invented by Count Gamma, who was a minister of the Morana Kingdom, which is long since extinct. In ancient times, commerce relied on a barter system using gold and silver, usually measured by weight. But it didn't really protect things like fraud. Gammel's currency introduced a simpler method using a number of silver coins. And the intricate engravings on those coins made them difficult to replicate, reducing the chance of counterfeits. And in honor of the Count's achievement, silver coins are referred to as Gammel. In the Kingdom of Eramir, there is a coinage guild that produces the silver coins. Production can happen in other countries, but it's a rule that all nations have to include Count Gammel's relief on those coins. And in addition to that, the purity and size of the coins have been standardized. One coin is 4 grams. Gold coins do circulate as well, but the standard is silver. Although one gold coin is worth 50 silver. And its weight is also 4 grams. So I know it'd be tempting to have it's just gold pieces or just silver pieces. I think a silver standard is something that makes a little bit more sense than a gold standard for currency.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think in a lot of medieval societies that did have commerce, that was the main currency when currency became a thing.
Well,
At least among middle class.
Well, the thing is, silver, a silver standard tends to be stronger only because silver's easier to find compared to gold.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how much that works in a world created by the death of a titan and gods, etc. But a silver standard does make sense. You are correct.
Yeah, and also having a currency system that is there primarily because of the fraud problem. I think that would fraud and standardization. I think were the key things that Gamma was trying to address with his proposal.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that being said, there are a few other things to bring up. One of them is the fact that within a lot of major cities, there are, as I mentioned, there are the various guilds, but they're never titled the Adventurers Guild or the Thieves Guild. They all have their own particular name. Like Oran, which is the capital of the nation of the same name. Its adventurers guilds are known as the Gateway to the Ancient Kingdom or the Brilliant Home. And you have a similar kind of thing with the other adventurers guild. As well as the idea that a lot of the quote-unquote ruins and dungeons are referred to as labyrinths. But even with that, there is still a major theme of rediscovering ancient technologies. And with that in mind, given everything that I've mentioned, I know I went into a lot, and I did skim over some things with the nations because I want to save that for later.
Mm-hmm.
What do you guys think of the world of Forcilia as presented here?
Whew, I want to play around in it. It sounds like a lot of fun.
And a big reason why I went into the different nations is I wanted to show that you can I think with the D&D association that people try to put on early Sword World, I'm not entirely sure if that completely matches. Mostly because, as I've mentioned in the past, D&D, even in its early days, decided to hem and haw about what kind of setting it was and what kind of fantasy it was, just relying on the genre savviness of its audience. The problem when you end up doing that is you end up creating the most generic pastiche of tropes when you don't give people guidance. But and even beyond the whole having a setting thing, I think the presentation of that setting also means that comparing this to either old school D&D or more modern OSR games, I don't think the comparison really holds weight. What do you think, Sid?
As far as what? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I kind of zoned in and out for a bit.
as far as because a lot of people have tried to parallel early D&D with Sword World 1.0, but you look at Forcilia, and I'm not sure that comparison really works.
No, especially because I've been also looking at the complete 1.0 book while I was looking at this. I'm like, where did they get that idea? It doesn't make any sense to me.
I think the idea comes from brain rot the D20 brain rot,
Mm-hmm.
and the whole story of how Lodos was born out of a D&D replay. But it certainly was, and those replays are available in English. But by the time we get to the book proper, the D&D Association is surface level at best.
Mm-hmm.
About as much as, say, the Mystara beat 'em ups that Capcom did. Which,
Ooh, good games. Love those.
it will always make me laugh that the mage in that isn't using a Vancian system.
Mhm.
Even in the 90s, they knew that system was bullshit.
Oh yeah.
And yes, there's also the fact that a Vancian system just isn't going to work in a beat 'em up. Like you look at the characters in Shadow of Mystara and Tower of Doom. Imagine trying to run those characters in AD&D. I don't think it really works, especially the wizard who can throw down as much as everyone else.
Not fun.
Oh no, definitely not. Especially because my whole search into RPGs was finding the answers to where Shadow Mystara and Tower of Doom came from. I was disappointed to say the least, but nothing going to stop me from trying to make it in some way or another.
Yeah, I know that Welch has done his whole deep dives into the world of Mystara, which is a fascinating world. But the fact of the matter is, the way characters are portrayed in that, imagine how deflating it might be for somebody who picks that up, then picks up D&D thinking they're going to play a similar kind of character, and then realizes they can't because one or two hits instantly puts them in the dirt due to how Thaco worked back then.
At least not without a lot of homebrewing.
Which, at that point, I remind people what I say about homebrewing when it comes to the Palladium system and every Bethesda game I've played.
Mm.
Well, the games that Bethesda has made, not the ones that they published. So, Doom, Prey, you're in a nice little bubble. Your bubble is moved off to the side over here.
For now.
Well, let me rephrase it. Any game using the Creation Engine.
Okay, fair enough. I'll accept that.
But Zan, I know I'm not sure how much of the complete edition you ended up going through, but what's been your impression of the vibe that Corselia has in comparison to what a lot of people consider high fantasy?
Say that one more time. I just want to make sure I'm parsing that correct.
What's based on everything that's been said? What's your view of Corselia?
As a place, it has a lot of interesting ways to tie into its overarching themes.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to be something you just have to do grand sweeping epics in a la, your Lords of the Rings and so on. You could have a lot of tiny stories in it that still are very fantastic, and I mean that in the adjective meaning full of fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
You can have a tiny, very close knit thing filled with the fantastic, as well as larger sweeping grand epics. And because of that, even though you're in a defined world that does have a small out for if you don't want to be in a defined world,
Mm-hmm.
you have a way of weaving the tapestry with this foundation that it gives you. So Vercelli is actually quite interesting. And you can really see where that goes if you've looked both at 1.0 and 2.0 and 2.5, how they like to build their worlds up so that you have all these threads to pull.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. I can most definitely see that. And one of the other reasons I wanted to highlight is because, as I mentioned, there's a lot of foundations of things that we will see in the 2.0 and 2.5 era. One of the big ones, and I feel like there's a bit of convergent creativity going on. The idea of rediscovery being one. Obviously, going into ancient ruins to get loot is one thing, but there seems to be just as much of an emphasis on rediscovering what was lost from those ancient eras, especially the ancient kingdom. There was a implication that some of the ancient spells are a way to backdoor in brand new spells that you could create that are discovered.
Mm-hmm.
And again, you have that motif of a blank check backdoor that can be integrated within the world. And from some of the designer notes that I saw, there seems to be a heavy encouragement to do that. To use what's here and make your own stories. Which is a far cry from certain people we know who want to tell you what sort of stories you're supposed to be making. Rooster. I'm not letting that go. Like, I've talked about this before, but I find that when a lot of people do the pitch of, oh, you can tell whatever kind of story you want in TTRPGs. Some of the people who say that don't believe it. At least they don't represent that belief through their own actions. But Maki, I believe you had said before that you had more experience with 2.0 than 1. Did you ever read any of the 1.0 materials?
I happened to have scanned books.
Ah.
But when I got into the sword world, it wasn't as common to see 1.0 played, as it was 2.0.
Mm-hmm. But
which was sort of going into full swing.
Yeah. Probably because that would be around the time of the 20th anniversary, give or take a few years. And so, given that, what's been your impression of Orcelia?
I think for me, personally speaking, I always appreciated the manner in which the world is built. You can see the same level of care and attention to detail in the coming lore sections of the future editions. But it gives a clear picture of the type of person you would want to play. If you were to pick a certain profession or a class.
Yeah, and some of that we will get into, because let me check the way I ordered it in the schedule. So in about 2 weeks, we will be covering the main part of it through, and I actually got these sides a bit mixed. We'll be covering a lot of the eastern side of Alecrest in about 2 weeks. 2 weeks after that, we'll be covering the far eastern side, the place known as the 10 Children. And after we get into covering the different regions, that's when we'll be getting into the crunch proper, because there are some things there to note and some interesting ideas that didn't carry over into 2.0, and some of them that kind of did. I know one might look at the description that I gave of spirit magic and its tied to elements and say, oh, that was incarnated into fairy magic. Yes and no. We'll get to that in the future. In fact, the excerpt from Roll and Roll that I found had it more that fairy magic. They were trying to make an analogy between fairy magic and a early Final Fantasy summoner. Which, not the comparison I would have made personally, but that's the one they picked. But with that said, that will more or less do it for this particular episode. I know this one was a bit longer than last one. In fact, let me check. Actually, no, about the same length. So we're at the very least somewhat consistent with the length of the podcast. But next time around, we will be focusing on the bigger nations of Alecrest, the locations within them, the peoples within them, who likes each other, who doesn't like each other, and go from there. But that should wrap it up here. So, Zan, you mind doing the honors as you've done the last 2 episodes?
Sure, I can always do that. We hope you've continued to enjoy our adventures through these sword-forged worlds. We hope that your adventures are grand and your treasures myriad.
Stay frosty.
See you on the trail.
Joy وصاعد